Привіт усім! Сьогодні я буду показувати Еріку відео On the Front Line in Ukraine Hotspots Ukrainian-Russian War. І потім я покажу Еріку оригінальне виконання гімну України зі святкування Дня Незалежності України у 2019 році. Вітаю вас на ніна-україна. Якщо ви тут вперше, обов'язково підпишіться і залиште лайк, якщо вам сподобається це відео. Eric, I know you are aware that Ukraine has war with Russia, that Russia wants to take over Ukrainian territory and Ukraine wants to preserve it and to save people so that people don't die. And it's been going on from 2014 over 5 years, 6 years until now, and I want to show you more details about that. Because I know you listen to the radio, you read some news, but maybe in your videos allow to understand a little bit better.
Yeah, that does help.
All of the main institutions, ports, roads, checkpoints, and never said anything. They just took it over. Absolutely nobody knew what to do about it, that it was actually a completely new strategic operation where you basically invade and say you didn't.
Invade and then say you didn't,
you know? Absolute chaos. It had been a very Russian-style attack.
That's what they did to Lithuania also, 1991.
The way Russia became involved in the Ukraine crisis was an indicator of how they could exert influence. Ukraine was a guinea pig for what they can do elsewhere. Be it direct military action, be it media manipulation. Could it be the Baltics? Could it be any of the old Soviet states that are wanting to go westward? You have an uprising that started here against a government that was clearly refusing to follow what appeared to be the will of the people.
We had our local issues with our government.
Much of Ukraine, with Western thinking, following into the European Union, was being denied. And so they took to the streets in a very, very violent way. Freezingly bitter cold weather, standing and fighting against police special forces who were shooting people fairly indiscriminately to impose the will of the government back on them, which ultimately they failed to do. I hadn't seen anything like it because it was sort of medieval in the way it was being fought. Fighting against a fully weaponized police unit. At the start, when you first turned up, you're trying to process it. That's when you really grasp, actually, fine, they might be fighting for something here, but there has actually been bodies and lives lost. And one of the arguments that came from both the government that was slowly collapsing and from Moscow that they were all fascists and it was a sort of right-wing conspiracy to turn it into a neo-Nazi state.
They always do that.
And at exactly that time, the propaganda that came from Moscow, which was, they're a bunch of fascists, they're going to come down and take away your Russian, many of whom do speak Russian in the East. They're going to burn your churches, and they're going to rape your children, and they are on their way, there's hordes coming. It was a media-controlled, sort of a load of nonsense, but it got more and more entrenched into the thinking.
Propaganda.
Sounds familiar.
Donbas, the East.
Familiar to in what sense?
Those rallies started.
It's coming here to a city near you. That's actually started already in this country.
Because, well, usually our region was stable.
Alexander, our producer, he was saying to me, Stuart, this just doesn't happen. And we were saying, no, it really is happening. This is an uprising. Then there was an anti-Eastern rally. They arrived in buses and got absolutely smashed by the Russian supporters. And then they started taking over government buildings, setting up their own sort of independent republic of Donbas.
It's in
This is the
Eastern
latest
Ukraine.
government building that's been taken over by the pro-Russian militia. It's interesting, they won't actually tell you what they're doing. It's quite clear that they've taken over the offices. They won't engage at all. However, they're quite happy for you to film. And I think that's very much the point of this. They're trying to get over this propaganda message, if you like, that they can take over these type of buildings at will. without doubt, Moscow was fueling the fire. Control of the media, the propaganda was absolutely deliberate. The relations between the eastern Donbas part of Ukraine and Russia are very, very tight. They speak Russian naturally. You know, that's what all you saw, all you heard was Russian speaking, Russian flag. It was Russian for me, not Ukraine.
We are pro-Russian. We want, you know, be close to Russia. No one said that we openly that we want to be inside Russia or something. We just want to be close.
As an entity, they just wanted to have their own values protected. And it sort of like slowly snowballed into this thing, well actually, yeah, there's a Ukrainian army coming, we're going to get attacked. Yes, but that wasn't really why they were coming. They were actually coming to try and stop the incursion into the country of Russian soldiers. All the time, soldiers wearing green uniforms, the little green men that we were later to see in Crimea, they were already arriving there as well. At the same time, only a few hundred miles away, the Russians were actually taking over Crimea.
Crimea.
Putin just said, I'm having that back. Yes. Before we even start anywhere else, that's coming back. They just took over. The Russian army came in and took over Crimea. They dressed completely different to anyone had seen before, and they simply refused to engage with you to explain. They took all of their main institutions, ports, roads, checkpoints, and never said anything. They just took it over. But they were pretty serious. I mean, you know, you'd have to be pretty stupid to have a go at them. Absolutely nobody knew what to do about it. Certainly no government in the West actually had ever seen anything like this, because it was actually a completely new strategic operation where you basically invade and say you didn't. And you continue to say you're not, even though the guys are special forces, even to the point when it's so clear that they are Russian soldiers, they say, well, then they're just off-duty Russian soldiers. Utterly absurd.
Very extremely
It was organised, it was pre-planned, they were waiting for the time to do it. And I suspect that what Russia wanted to do was to see what it could do to push back. It's very, very clever. It's sort of unsubtle, but incredibly subtle at the same time.
Wow.
The various Ukrainian military bases slowly but surely fell. But one was left, and it was one base. And we decided to go into the base to have a look. This was very early on in my career. You know, I felt like something was going to happen, but to be honest, I had no idea. And I said, why aren't they letting us out? And Stuart said, we're not going out. And I said, why? He said, basically, you know, we're in here because we're protecting them at the moment. It was quite clear something was going on, right? They were the last ones. And we could see tanks, APCs, slowly growing in number. Troops kind of all up on the hills, scoping it out, really. Turned to Stuart and he said, you see that vehicle moving? So I said, yeah. I'll bet you it just comes through the wall. I laughed.
Oh,
he said, no, I'm not joking. So I quickly picked my camera up. He said, where am I aiming? Where am I aiming? I said, just aim at that corner, it's coming through. It came straight through the wall. Whoa. All of the Ukrainian soldiers put anything they'd been carrying on the floor immediately, hands in the air, and everyone, all the media started running around. Get down. It was absolute chaos. Fast bombs. Okay, these are fast bombs. I think they're coming in. Yes. The Russians have stormed the base. They came straight over to me and tried to push the lens down. They were very aggressive towards us. They didn't want us filming. I was shaking. I'd never done anything like this before. Oh, it's as scary as hell. I mean, you know this is happening. You know these are soldiers and you know they're shooting. And my concern was that the Ukrainian army would actually do something stupid like try to protect themselves, because they were just going to get killed straight away, but we could all get killed with them. Ultimately, when they come to the wall, you put your hands in the air and hope they don't shoot. You run around for a bit, but when you realise that wherever you look, there's another guy with a gun pointed at you, there's nothing you can do but put your hands in the air and say, I hope they don't shoot.
You don't feel so bad about your earlier today.
Yes, quite right. Yes, you're so right. Yeah, I've completely forgotten about that.
Debaltseve was really a place that nobody had ever heard of. It was of no real value to anyone. It was a siding, I think, effectively on a massive railway track. But it became a holdout strong point for Ukrainian military as they were surrounded by a massive number of Russian-backed rebels. This was a proper battle, fighting everywhere. It had been a very Russian-style attack, which is grab missiles just piling in, give up or retreat and leave. There is a hope that the taking of Debaltseve would lead to a lull in the fighting and a ceasefire. Well, it doesn't feel like it here. This seems very much like an army on the move. The Ukrainian army eventually got out under cover of darkness and lost loads of men. I've never seen destruction like it. People have been killed, there's no doubt about that.
Many families had to move from that region because they couldn't continue living and lost their jobs and everything, and houses, properties.
It was a proper job.
Yes. Yeah.
There was a truck coming up towards me, big military lorry. And as it came up and passed me, I looked behind, and the bloke was just kicking bodies off. Quite literally just kicking Ukrainian bodies off, kind of just by my feet. First time I'd ever seen a dead body, so my mouth went to the floor. That's when I kind of grasped, yes, it was a small town, but the Ukrainians probably put up a hell of a fight. The same truck, they've got a guy with a stomach injury. And I took kind of one look at him, and he was dying. But they were very quick to put him on the floor, slap him about a bit, and get me out.
Your watch?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Okay. Okay, cool. No worries.
Where to film him. Who is this guy? Why is he there? Is he part of the Ukrainian forces? He is an alleged spy, whatever. Slap, intimidate him, everything. Sometimes you're sort of just there. It was hardcore. When you're in those situations, if anything, we usually get told not to film. But these Russians wanted to intimidate this bloke. They wanted to embarrass him. And I felt bad. Fine, it was great shots and it told the story. But I didn't feel, I knew that guy didn't really deserve that. He was fighting for somewhere he probably lived his whole life. Russia has used Ukraine's differences between its east and west as a guinea pig to work out how it can actually do anything, with no obvious solution in sight whatsoever.
I don't see any side willing to make a first step or to somehow resolve the situation.
They've never got over NATO expansion, and Putin's ambition is to make sure that those who used to belong to the club remain in the club and don't go and join another one. We will become great again, even if it means being outside of international norms of a welcome state, even if it takes a decade.
There is something you don't see on the U.S. news.
So you were not aware of the extent of that?
The extent of it, yes. The continuation of it, not so much. I didn't realize it was still ongoing to such a level. When American news gets tired of broadcasting the same thing, they'll just drop it all together, and you'll get the impression that the scenario has changed or the violence is over. That's how American news operates. That's why I listen to shortwave radio news, because it has a global scope. And if there's still a continuing problem in any sort of nation, shortwave news broadcasters will typically report on it, even if it's not in their own country. They'll just take the biggest news worldwide and put it out there. The U.S. doesn't do that. It's a shame, and it's why Americans are often uninformed unless they look elsewhere.
I really hope that this war will over soon, and that Ukrainians will not continue to die, and that the territory of Ukraine doesn't change.
Yes.
The borders. Last year, Ukraine was celebrating 28 years of independence. This year, it will be 29 years. So right now, we're gonna watch a video of the national anthem performance last year, and I think it was very beautiful. It was performed in a very creative way at the Central Square in Kyiv.
Okay, this is interesting.
I'll remind you now the words of Ukrainian anthem. You can read just the 6 lines.
Ukraine's glory, Ukraine's freedom did not disappear. Fate will smile on us Ukrainians. Our skies will be clear. Our enemies will vanish like a sun-dried foam. We will be the only masters in our dear home. We will give our souls and bodies for our freedom, and will show that we are brothers in the Cossack breed born.
So it will be performance of this.
I recognize this again.
It's our current president,
Okay.
Zelensky. Painted as Ukrainian flag.
I like
blue
that.
and blue and yellow,
Yeah.
You will be impressed now, you'll see many of those.
Oh, wow.
That is so cool.
По правді відкрию, як є, знаю, хто я, і не беру, що є, не моє. А мати мені казала усе, коріння своє дороге. В житті варто бути таким, як ти є, і правду казати одразу в лице. І вільно думати, наповно дихати, а у серці першому черзі, де щастя є ти. Ой, money can buy, знати себе і знати свій край. Ай, своя гордість в мене є. А як же вишневий садок, хрущі там уже не гудуть. Та знаю, як плугатері з новими плугами ідуть. І бачу я сильних жінок, які за собою ведуть. І з ними їх чоловіки, які благородність несуть. Карпати залунають, заспівають храми, понесуться диким вітром попід горами. Накопаєм свої шрами, прикрашають рани. Хай степи і озера тихають лісами. Тут моє коріння мами, це золото вустами. Не шукай ще цвітами, ти лише прийди до тями. Окови знявши із своїх думок, сплетемо по коліновий вінок. Ей! 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 Ха!
Тіна Кароль. It's
What a voice.
one of the best singers in Ukraine right now.
I can tell. Oh,
That's not Bandura, that's a different one, but yeah.
similar. Very similar to a harp.
Oh, now I have the blues.
This is utterly fantastic. He looks very emotional.
That's ex-presidents, Ukrainian ex-presidents. They invited them for a celebration.
There's more drone footage. Those do great camera work. That's spectacular. Wow, that is absolutely spine-tingling.
I want to listen to the small moment when Tina Karol was singing.
Yes, let's hear that again.
It is-
I know.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting the same, especially hearing it again. I have to say several things about her voice. The human voice is my favorite musical instrument anyway. I would say most other instruments imitate the human voice or elements of nature. I think that's primarily what instruments do. Well, you know, especially if you hear the cello, it's such a beautiful expression of usually a male voice, and I suppose a viola or violin is a good expression of a female voice. That kind of thing.
And guitar?
You know, just about any voice could be imitated with a guitar if it's in the correct range. So I suppose all of them, really. And there's always been a thought that percussion imitates the human heart.
So what did you think about her voice?
Yeah, I want to say a bunch of things here. Wow, in such a short moment, I could tell she's one of the best vocalist in the world. She's out of this world, really. That voice, not only does she have a pretty wide range, but her voice sounds similar in all ranges. Her voice still sounds warm, but still clear in the high range. There's no, I don't think she's even using falsetto. That sounds like her real range, which is also impressive. She also knows, a great vocalist, when you watch them, they know exactly where the mic should be placed, depending on what note they're singing and how loud they're going to have to sing it. I saw her pull the mic away precisely. That's also an element of professionalism that I noticed in singers.
She's been a singer for 15 years.
Yeah,
So.
flawlessly precise pitch and that beautiful vibrato. Her voice is warm too. It's not sharp or harsh in any way. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
how does it compare to American Independence Day celebration?
Most of the things in America are for commercial purposes. You know, just firecrackers. This, you can get the real feeling that this is
Very important.
Oh yeah.
But we still, you know, cannot fully feel free because, you know, of what's happening in the eastern Ukraine.
This is not the first time the Russian or Soviet Empire has done this. I remember listening to Radio Vilnius, Lithuania, about 1991, and there was an invasion there. The opposition, which was similar to what happened in Ukraine, was so strong. So when the situation occurred in Ukraine, I recognized it right away. I thought this is eerily similar to what happened in Lithuania in the 90s, early 90s. So nothing new. They're still using the same tyrannical takeover tactics.
Any message you want to send to Ukrainians who are struggling?
Wow, I'm honored to have you ask me that. I'm just one person in the world and I don't even know that much, but I know that sometimes in the most desperate time, the last thing you really can do with nothing left is to go down fighting with everything you have. At the very least, it will get international media attention, and then maybe a turning point can occur. But if you're backed into a corner like that, there's sometimes nothing you can do except battle. And this is a really proud statement of, you're not holding us down. You may make further inroads to that degree, but you're not going to take us down. This is a beautiful, powerful statement.
Thank you so much for watching these videos.
Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you for helping, you know, to put a better perspective of this in my own mind. I wasn't even aware it was continuing to that degree.
Якщо вам сподобалось це відео, то залиште лайк, підписалися на Ніна-Україна і також напишіть внизу, які ще відео ви хочете, щоб я показувала американцям. Ми дуже скоро побачимося з вами у наступному відео. Па-па!
They know I'm here. It's time to go. I'll see you.